of 30 people already in this webinar, which is about to start in a few minutes. I also see our other panelists and presenters are here, so we're almost ready to rumble. You can see some on the screen already. People still dropping in. I have a panel in front of me on my screen showing the number of participants. So almost every second, the number increases. We're almost 40 now. Excellent. I do not want to penalize the people who are on time by making them wait. So I think we should make a start shortly. Okay, we're almost 50 people there. Impressive. Welcome to everybody to this part of the second part of the final web conference of the MAMBA project. I hope you can see my screen. My name is Ralph Brandt. I'm your moderator today. Most of you might know that there has already been last week a first part of the final MAMBA conference dealing more with bigger kind of conceptual levels, issues around mobility in rural areas. There will be another one next week, the third part, more about policy implications around mobility in rural areas. And today, we're kind of lowering our flight path. We're going down and we'll visit a number of very concrete projects and initiatives that try to improve mobility for people in rural areas. So you'll hear some inspirational hands-on stories. As I said, I'm Ralph Brandt. I work for Ruprecht Consult in Cologne, Germany. I'm a geographer and spatial planner by training. At our company, Ruprecht Consult, I lead a team that's called People-Focused Mobility Solutions, which is a bit of an awkward title, but it's actually very programmatic. We mean that. The center of our work is really the needs of people. MAMBA is a Baltic Sea region Interreg program focusing on rural mobility. It's coming to an end, hence the final conference, obviously. So your program today, these are the titles of the individual presentations. I'm not reading them for you, not now yet. Just to highlight a few bits, we'll actually have a book launch today. So it's a book launch party, a guide to collaborative mobility. There will be a video from a MAMBA project in Trelleborg, a presentation about ride-sharing initiative, about new rural communities, about a transport on-demand service, and about accessibility of services in France. So basically, stories from 4 different countries. If you include Trelleborg, that would be actually 5. We'll have a questions and comments and discussion section, kind of an interaction with the audience at the end. And visual notes. Visual notes were also taken in the first part of the MAMBA Final Conference last week. So this is the image that this talented artist, Kitty, drew. And she'll do the same today. She'll try to encapsulate the essence of our presentations and discussions visually. And hopefully we'll have time at the end to let her show her drawing. So this is the timeline we're working towards. It's tight, and the individual presentations have only 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Obviously, this is mainly a teaser. We cannot go into a lot of depth in 1.5 hours. So hopefully the presentations entice you to go to the MAMBA project website to learn more about these stories, or in fact, to contact our presenters. Just a few housekeeping items. You might know that we're recording the event so that other people can actually watch the same presentations afterwards. They will be available online afterwards. And if you have any questions or comments at any time, you will see in your Zoom navigation panel, there's a Q&A icon, meaning question and answers. So just feel free to post any thoughts or question or comment you might have. Towards the end of the session, we'll look at that and we can then pose these questions to our presenters. All right. So I'm not only the moderator of today. You have to bear with me also for the keynote. Originally, my colleague, Julia Dick, was supposed to give this keynote, but unfortunately, she became unavailable. So I'll try to introduce a new book to you, Everybody's Guide to Collaborative Mobility and Accessibility Solutions in Rural Areas. So this is, as I said, a book launch party. This is the first day in history when this publication is available on the MAMBA website. I'm not the only author. I mentioned Julia Dick and my colleague Christine, and also people from the Vidstemme University of Applied Sciences contributed to this publication, which is based a lot on the actual on-the-ground experience made in the MAMBA pilot projects. It's important to have a shared understanding of what this adjective means here in the title, collaborative. And let me try to introduce this by presenting just mentally this spectrum. You could imagine any kind of project or initiative that was initiated by the public sector, or you could imagine an initiative that was just created and envisaged by citizens, kind of grassroots people. Imagine a Facebook group where people arrange kind of shared rides. That would be a project. You could imagine this was exclusively initiated by citizens. And if you think in a kind of orthogonal spectrum to this, you could also position every initiative along a spectrum who implemented a project. So is it implemented by the public sector, or is it implemented by citizens, local people on the ground without any state intervention? So if we look at this Facebook ride-sharing group again, you might say that it was initiated by a grassroots group and implemented by a grassroots group. So you would position a project in this coordinate system about where this dot is. And you could do this for any other project. Now, what we mean by collaborative mobility solutions is roughly represented by this greenish kind of ellipse, meaning that we're interested, when we say in collaborative mobility solutions, solutions with an involvement of both grassroots, people, citizens, volunteers, and the state. In fact, that's, I think, important to mention because in some discourses, it seems that there's a hope that the state can withdraw from financial or other commitments to solve mobility problems, especially in rural areas, that kind of the free market or volunteers or citizen groups will magically take care of the situation. And I think the point we wanted to make here is that, of course, there can be a role for citizens, volunteers, NGOs, and so forth, but it does not mean that the state is kind of off the hook. And what you see here is actually already a screenshot from a little box that's in this guide book. Now, what this two-dimensional system I just showed did not show, in fact, is there are other groups, social groups, that can play an important role. In the previous slide, I only mentioned grassroots citizens and the state, but there is, of course, businesses that can play a role, NGOs, non-commercial organizations, non-governmental organizations, and so forth. And where these come together at different degrees of involvement, of course, this is what we mean by collaborative mobility solutions. And we wanted to produce not just an academic abstract publication, we wanted to produce a step-by-step guide. And we took some inspiration from another step-by-step guide. Some of you might have seen this. This is kind of the guiding model of sustainable urban mobility planning, SUMP as it's called, which is a very widely established and successfully applied planning and implementation principle across Europe. What you see here is maybe a bit too complicated, so we try to simplify this a bit by focusing on these 4 main quadrants. I highlighted them in different colors, and to show the similar colors were here used for the MAMBA guide. 4 phases. This is what we propose is a useful way to think about initiatives, how you can prepare, structure, and implement local mobility solutions. So if we just briefly focus on each of these phases. In phase 1, we say it's really important to get a deep, detailed understanding of the local context. And here's a screenshot from the table of contents from the phase 1. So we say step 1A, just to illustrate the logic of this document. First of all, identify the main problems. So to make sure everything you do is targeted towards solving specifically concrete problems. So you start with a problem and not with a solution. Sometimes people are fascinated by solutions, but they actually don't quite meet the needs of the people. Secondly, take stock of the local context. Just reflect, what's the demography of your region? What is the topography, the geography of your region? Just make yourself aware of this, because that can then lead to challenges, specific challenges that you have to be aware of. And of course, certain opportunities and strength of your region. And in the middle, I kind of skipped this. The case study. In all these chapters, we introduced case studies to make things really concrete, to show how and which cases did some specific steps particularly well. And once you've done this, we think there's a reason to celebrate. You've achieved a milestone. And there's a similar structure to all 4 phases. You will also see from the page numbers here, each phase is about 5 or 6 pages. So it's not a massive, daunting, overwhelming document. We try to really make this very approachable and accessible, easy to digest. I'm not reading out these individual steps, all of them, but just to show, generally speaking, how it's structured. Each phase is broken down into individual steps, again, with case studies woven into each phase. Also for the last phase, which is obviously about actual implementation, the operation of a service or a new solution. But also we included a step about monitoring. That's sometimes a bit overlooked, but it's very important in particular to have evidence, ideally numbers, to show this is the effect of our initiative, of our efforts. Sometimes that can be very helpful to convince politicians, for example, and the public, the media, to continue support. Each step has some key features. So we introduce the basic idea. We try to use really jargon-free language. We articulate what's the main aim, what's the essential aim of each step. Key tasks. We introduced a number of checklists to help you, guide you through the project, through the process. And we also presented some tools, some hands-on approaches, which might help you through the process. And here are some screenshots from case studies, which we included in order to make things really tangible and concrete and easy to understand. This, what you see here, is a screenshot of the MAMBA project website. You might have been there. And actually, if you go to /products, you will see a lot of documents. And this is also where this guide, the publication I just introduced, will be available. Here, for your convenience, I created a short URL, so you can go through that directly. tinyurl.com. This is a way to shorten long URLs, internet addresses, MAMBA-guide. And in fact, I wanted to draw your attention to another publication we worked on. It's kind of a sister document, Mobility for All in Rural Areas. This will be available in a few days. This is specifically about the experience made in the MAMBA projects. And I take the liberty of inviting you to another project website, the Inclusion Project, which is another European project, Horizon 2020 funded project, which is also about inclusive mobility in rural, but also in urban areas. It's generally speaking about helping people who are typically underlooked, undervalued by mainstream public transportation efforts, and what can be done to improve this situation. This is it. This is the introduction, the book launch. And if you have questions about this, write them in the question and answer section. We'll look at that. And now it's time to look to Trelleborg, which is one of the partners from Sweden, a MAMBA partner. And they have an interesting story to tell. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. So that, our colleagues from Nordregio can share their video. Is it Johanna? Johanna, is it you who's going to share the video? There we go.
Här i Trelleborg så har vi utvecklat en pilot, ett coworking space, en digital plattform för hållbart resande och en databas för mobilitetsprojekt. Databasen som vi har tagit fram är en sammanställning och visualisering av mobilitetsprojekt som sker runt omkring Östersjön. Och vi har då sammanställt information, kortfattat information om projektet och sen en länk för mer information till respektive hemsida. Trelleborgs kommun har kollektivtrafik över hela kommunen och där det saknas kanske busstationer, där finns en tilläggstjänst som heter närtrafik. Detta vill vi marknadsföra mera med en plattform för hållbart resande. Så då har vi sammanställt olika transportsätt som man kan ta sig igenom kommunen. Syftet med vår pilot här i Trelleborg är att utveckla social mobilitet för äldre på landsbygden, då vi arrangerar bussutflykter till olika destinationer för äldre invånare på landsbygden. Många äldre som kanske inte vill köra bil eller som inte kan köra bil längre har svårt att ta sig till destinationer dit kollektivtrafiken är bristfällig. Så vi har utvecklat en mobilitetstjänst för äldre att tillsammans kunna åka på utflykter. I Södra Åby, som är en tätort utanför Trelleborgs stad, så har vi utvecklat ett koncept där som kallas för coworking space. Ett slags kontorscafé där personer som har möjlighet att kunna jobba hemifrån kan sätta sig tillsammans och arbeta.
Ralph, you're muted. Still muted. You are still muted, Ralph.
Okay. I couldn't unmute myself. I clicked on the unmute icon, sorry, but it wouldn't let me. But it seems I can hear me now again. Yes, people are nodding. Thank you. Sorry for the technical glitch. So let's continue. Can I? Yes, I can show my screen, hopefully. So this was the Trelleborg video. I saw in the question and answer section that it was blurred for someone. It was fine. It looked fine to me. I don't know, maybe is there a way to make this video available on the MAMBA website so people can maybe watch it later in a perfect quality?
Yes, it will be available on the MAMBA website.
Great, thank you. So now we move on to some inspirational stories from MAMBA and beyond, as promised. So the first case is from MAMBA indeed. The pilot action in Vejle in Denmark was part of the MAMBA project, and it's being presented by Marianne Pedersen. She's the project leader of this initiative in Vejle municipality. And I asked all the presenters beforehand about their vision for rural mobility. And her vision is that she's hoping that we can create growth and development throughout the country, not just in the big cities, and in fact, to get people to move back into the rural areas. And her initiative might be a key cornerstone, an element that might make this vision a reality. So Marianne, I'm looking forward to your presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen again so you can show yours.
Yes, hello everybody. Can you see my screen? Okay, my name is, as Ralph said, Marianne Pedersen, and I was the project lead for the MAMBA project in Vejle municipality. Vejle is placed in the southern part of Denmark. It has roughly 112,000 inhabitants throughout the whole municipality. The largest city is Vejle, and we have 4 larger cities or towns, and then the rest is rural areas. So there's quite a lot to work with in Vejle. Our pilot area is a small city called Smidstrup, actually 2 cities. There's roughly 780 inhabitants. Before the MAMBA project, they had 2 buses a day, 4 buses a day, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. And when the young people missed the bus in the afternoon, they could not get home. By car, you can reach Vejle, Fredericia, and Kolding within 15 to 20 minutes. So they were really challenged on their mobility. So just to tell shortly about the Navigo concept that we in MAMBA teamed up with. There will be a video after my presentation, so that will explain it more. But just to give you some highlights is that we have predefined meeting points to make the travel easier for the driver and also for the passengers, so everybody knows where the starting point is and where the end destination is. This also gives a very good pricing beforehand, so everybody knows the price of the trip. And we also made it available, payment available in the solution. So everything is done via the Navigo app. We have also an interface to the national travel planner where all the bus and train timetables is placed. So if there is no ride available, you can see if there is a bus, or if you want to take a ride to the nearest train station, you can also see when the train is leaving. So that means that we can combine a trip from your home destination to your end destination, combined with a ride-sharing trip with the bus to the train. Navigo does not get any cut from the payment between the chauffeur and the driver, so there is no user fee to us. So what we did was that first we talked with the local council to talk about the MAMBA and the Navigo solution. Then we talked to the citizens, and then we created the solution, and then we went live. As you can see on the 3 pictures in the bottom, that we went live with a session at the local supermarket. And actually it was quite a big success. People really got into the solution at these sessions. So that was quite funny. So during the project period, we have actually expanded quite a lot, thanks to the MAMBA project and also to Vejle. So as you can see here, besides Denmark, where we are in 11 municipalities and 2 regions out of 5 and 2 traffic companies, we are also expanding into Sweden, where we have 5 municipalities and 1 traffic company. And we are also pending in 5 other European countries. So yes, people are aware that ride sharing is a way to solve the mobility chaos in the rural areas, if you can say that. So we actually reached quite far out, and since we started in September last year. So yeah, that is actually quite good. I will now show you the video that we made in MAMBA about Navigo, and this will explain the rest of how the solution is working.
They drive alone in their car. At the same time, public transport, which has the potential to solve the problems, is economically challenged by less use, especially in the countryside where the buses run less frequently. How do we stop this negative spiral? Peer-to-peer ride-sharing is part of the solution. We want to include private cars in the public transport system, and that's why we developed the Navigo platform, which creates matches between people going the same way. But it's more than that, because in the same platform, users can see all options with public transport. This way, they can find the best itinerary with only one search, for example, a lift with Navigo out in the morning and a bus home in the afternoon. To make ride-sharing an easy choice, we created digital meeting points, which enables you to make a rideshare appointment with just a few clicks. An example is the village Snydrupskærp, which originally had 4 daily departures by bus towards the nearby city of Vejle. After we launched Navigo, citizens of this village now has the opportunity to get a lift to several big cities in Denmark on a daily basis. The platform shows combinations of transport, so users can often find the fastest way to their end destination. For example, a Navigo lift from the village to a station in the city, where they can jump on a train to their final destination. We enter into partnerships with municipalities all over the country and with several transport companies and regions. People are embracing ride-sharing, and we look forward to continue to work with partners and to engage users in Denmark and in Europe.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Marianne. I assume you're done, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, that was it from me. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Again, if you have questions or comments about Marianne's presentation or her work, write it in the question and answer box in the Zoom window. And I can continue sharing my screen, but just briefly, as kind of the transition to our next presentation from Frederick Fisher. You could maybe say that Marianne's work, Navigo, app and service is about getting people to certain destinations. So facilitating the mobility of people. Maybe it's fair, Freddie, correct me if I'm wrong, to say that your work is about accessibility, which is also the title of a lot of the MAMBA work and actually of the project title, which is maybe not necessarily focusing on getting people to certain destinations, but actually questioning the need to travel in the first place. So Frederick is presenting the co-dorf concept, very programmatic name, I learned. And Frederick is a journalist by training and political economist. He studied in Aarhus, Amsterdam, London, Washington, D.C. So he has his share of experience from big cities, but he also wrote me that now he turns his back on the big cities. And his new goal is no less than solving the problems of suburban sprawl. And the more he works with rural areas, the surer he is that the future will be invented or reinvented in the countryside. I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, Frederick. I'll stop sharing my screen as usual. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Just a second. And thanks also for the other projects that I learned about today. They are really inspiring. It's really great to hear about them. So just 1 second. All right. Yeah, so I want to introduce you pretty quickly to the co-dorf movement or co-village movement. We are standing for co-working and co-living on the countryside. Housing is one of the most pressing issues these days, and yet we haven't really seen any sort of innovation for the last 50 years. The way that we build one-family house settlements is unsustainable in basically every way. It takes way too much space. The houses are not ecologically built. They contribute to the donut effect, so they draw a lot of the cultural life out of the city center to the rim of the municipalities. And last but not least, they're also not very social as a form of living because everyone is hiding behind their own hedges. So there's usually not a lot of contact. And all those issues we want to tackle with the co-dorf. So what are co-dörfer? We have around 50 small ecologically built wooden houses. And together as a community, we afford ourselves quite luxurious infrastructure for rural areas. We have a co-working space, we have an event space, we have a cafe, we have workshops, a community kitchen. And as you can see from this image here, we don't have hedges and we don't take a lot of space. So with the co-dorf concept, we can build much more densely, much more ecologically sustainable, fit in more people, and thereby creating a sort of urban atmosphere and urban infrastructure, even though we're really far away from urban areas usually. What is also really important is that is of course the question of mobility. So wherever we are looking for a property for a co-dorf, one of the first boxes we want to check is the vicinity of a station. So the location of the first co-dorf in Wiesenburg, we were really lucky with that property because it's really just opposite the station, as you can see from the next image here. So on the left side, you see the station. And in the middle, you see the property. The co-dorf still has to be built. We can start building at the beginning of next year. It's a very long process, as you can imagine, because we are using usually industrial kind of properties and revitalize them. And in the middle, you see the sawmill, which we revitalize and which will be the heart of the community with a co-working space and all the other communal facilities. Yeah, here just to jump back quickly, that is Wiesenburg, where the first co-dorf will be built. It's 1 hour away from Berlin. And that is really far away from the so-called Speckgürtel, like the area around Berlin that was prospering for many years now. This is a very, very rural area. But nevertheless, thanks to projects like the co-dorf, but also similar projects, this area of Wiesenburg and Bad Belzig, which were like depopulating quite quickly just a couple of years ago, are now one of the hotspots of innovation in Brandenburg, and I would say all over Germany. So just to give you a short impression of the dynamic that can unfold through projects like that, in 2017, Coconut was starting there. It's the first co-working space in the rural area in Germany. And then 2 years later, we were joining, and also Neuland 21, which is a think tank for like rural life in the 21st century. And since then, really basically every 2 months there are new projects starting there. So we are a model region for smart villages, smart village solutions, which was just announced 2 days ago. We're a model region for 5G. We are a model region also for autonomous driving. And that is just, that's just a quick overview. There are so many projects that I can't mention them all in the short time that is given. But I hope I get across the dynamic that is unfolding if a couple of those projects come together, and if those projects get support by the public and the local municipalities, and of course the people in the villages itself. Yeah, we now want to export this idea and the positive feedback that we got. We started the second Kuhdorf in Erndtebrück, which is in North Rhine-Westphalia. Also there, we are close to a station, just 5 minutes walking distance. And we hopefully export this idea all over Germany. We are in talks with many different municipalities right now, and hopefully at some point also all across Europe. Because, I mean, even though we started a couple of years ago already, I think what really changed now, and why I think the solutions that we heard so far, and also the Kuhdorf, really hit a nerve in this a very specific time we are living in right now. Because we see and we all experience the decoupling of the workplace and the place we are actually working. So the flexibility of workspaces, remote work, has all been tested in fast forward since COVID. And maybe we will see now, and I'm quite optimistic, and data also is pointing towards that direction, is that now many more people are really able to live where they actually want to live. And that is not in the city. As you can see from this pie chart, only 13% of the people, it was a representative study among Germans, only 13% mentioned that they really want to live at a city center, like at the center of a big city. The rest, they want to live somewhere like close to the border of the city, or they want to live in a village or in a small city. And that is quite different from what we actually see when we look at where people are living. So I think thanks to remote work and the changes we see right now, we will see many more people will actually be able to live where they want to live. That means that we need new solutions. And it also means, like what Ralph said, that we are able to decrease the need for mobility if we create a more dense, a more social way of living on the countryside. And we hope to have a small contribution in that change. Yeah, if you have any further questions, you see me on Twitter, and of course you can write an email. And of course we also have a conversation afterwards, which I'm looking forward to.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Frederick. Perfectly on time. Amazing, inspirational. And I can acknowledge at least that we are aware of some questions that have already come in the question and answer section. I just would like to collect them a bit longer so that we don't risk the last presenter to get squeezed out. But we are aware of that. And I wanted to highlight that just from looking at the chat and the question and answer section, some people said hello from Finland, Hungary, Germany, Sweden, Poland, the north of Scotland. So we're a really international crowd here. It's a pleasure to be part of. Without further ado, I would like to move on to Latvia, to Liga Purina Purite. She disclosed to me, has a strong background in humanitarian and non-governmental work. She's actually a big city person. So she's grown up in the capital of Latvia, Riga. But for the last 3 years, she was working on rural mobility issues in the Vidzeme region. And you might remember that the Vidzeme University of Applied Sciences is also a member of the MAMBA project and is co-author of the guide I presented earlier. Interestingly, she wrote, when she started working on MAMBA, she was thinking that she would be working a lot with technical transport issues, but in reality, I quote, it was all about people, their needs, expectations for better living, and rights to have service for better and equal living in rural area. I think that's an interesting observation, maybe sometimes even a tension, the hope and the belief in technology as solution for everything, but we always encounter people, which is something we have to acknowledge and to work with, and also to utilize, of course. So Liga, I hand over to you. I look forward to your presentation about a transport on-demand service.
Just a moment, I'm just going back to the slide. Sorry, starting from the backwards. Hello, do you hear me? Yeah, my name is Liga Puriņa-Purīte, and I'm representing Vidzeme Planning Region, the initiative called Transport on Demand. For last 11 months, we have introduced a unique transport model in Latvia, which is called Transport on Demand. On the left side, you see the European map and Latvia with pink and our region with a green. And we have implemented our Transport on Demand model in 2 pilot areas. One is Masalots and another is Alūksne. They both are border cities and far from the center, from the capital. We have 2 different models. In Alūksne, it is created on concrete area and on concrete days the transport runs, but in Masalots County, it works in all territory and in any working day. Here you can see myself. It was nearly a year ago. It was in Masalots, and it was our first person who was taking transport on demand ride. She's more than 80 years old lady, and she was driving from home to the library to change books. And it was only about 1.5 kilometer long distance. How we run our service? To run our service, we have organized a mobility center in Vidzeme Planning Region. We have 1 person working on mobility center. She is receiving phone calls from the inhabitants of the area, and they can order the trip 24 hours before. As well, we have purchased the IT solution to run the system, and we have purchased also vehicles to run the service in both pilot areas. I will not read all the text here, but here you can see how the system is working. We have 2 types of vehicles. One of the vehicle is 5 seats, and we also use 16-seat buses. Some statistics. We run our pilot from 21st of October last year, and we will do it till the 30th of September this year, so a few weeks ahead. And till now, we have statistics that's altogether around 2,680 passengers has used our service. We have driven together 24,000 kilometers, and the main destinations of the users have been, first of all, doctor visits, post office,
social office as well. People have been driving just to buy food in a local shops and used it to go to work. What are our recommendations? To build up mobility solutions, if you want them successful, first of all, build them together with end users. Remember, you don't know what they need. They know what they need. And as well, very important thing is actively work on marketing and public relations. We have done it on regional level, on local newspapers, sorry, and as well on local regional TVs. It has given us really great success. And of course, the third thing is evaluate what you have achieved and improve it. And our conclusion of our pilot is that wherever you live, you should have the same access to service. And here you can see some pictures from the people. And now I would like to share you a small story and to introduce to the end users who they are and how they live and what was the service. Thank you. And can I ask to Johanna to share the video, please?
Transporta tekstīmam.
Labdien, Martiņa!
Labdien! Jā.
Es tev augstu no Mazdām. Es lūdzu gribētu pasūtīt transportu rītam uz aptieku ap 10:00.
Labi, un tikko atpakaļ?
Nu, atpakaļ tur kāds minūtes, 20. Tur līdzās ir veikaliņš, varbūt ieskriešu tajā.
Labi, sarunāts pierakstīju.
Jā, paldies.
Paldies! Jā, atā.
Atā. Mēs visi tie seniori, kas dzīvo kaimiņos, apmierināti. Jo mums jau visi apkārt dzīvo strādājošie, viņam nav laiks mūs nekur vizināt. Tas transporta pakalpojums ļoti labs, izdevīgs. No rīta 7:30 no Ruvinas uz Valmieri gar šejieni viens autobus tikai viens. Bet ja vajag man tur 10 vai pie dakteres vai vieglāk ir, citādi jau mums nezinu, ko mēs te darītu. Kājām aiziet nevar iz Masovacai. Vairāk agrāk braucu ar velosipēdu, ziemu un vasaru, un tad kritu reizēm, un tagad tas ceļgals atsaucās laikam uz to visu, uz visu to sportošanu ziemā. Es parasti braucu uz aptieku, uz pastu pēc pensijas, un pie friziera, kur jau citur.
Viens autobus, tas ir no vidus ceļa līdz ceļiem. Vispār nekad, nevienu reizi dienā nenāk autobus neviens. Un tad ir ļoti jauki, kad ir šāds te pakalpojums, ka mēs varam izmantot. Vismaz var tikt normāli, kur vajag. Man iznāk dažādi, vairāk jau kā man darbā maiņas iekrīt, bet ir arī bieži, kas kāds 5-6 reizes nedēļā izmantoju. Tā kā kuro reizi.
Tas te projekts būtu visu laiku, tev jau būtu labi, bet viņš jau drīz beigsies. Autobus jau nav jēgas te dzīvi, tā viena cilvēka diviem. Neatmaksājas, es tā domāju. Satiksme ir kā ir. Rīgas autobusi, tas reti Alstvīķi nāk vienu reizi diena pusda laika līdz Alstvīķi. Un tā ir uz Āpja laikam pāris maršrutu. Ja vairāk nav. Es netieku nekur. Nu labi, ka šodien tā pustīts ar galvu. Man kā galva sāk reit, tā tikai ar kūjas palīdzību pārvietojos. tas brauktu, kā saka, kuru reizi ir iedot tas mazais autobus, tas atbrauc, vispār piezvanu uz sēsi, norunājam, cik uz kas un kā ir, un tad mani paņem, vai nu mājās aiziet uz kalnu augšā, paņem aiziet, pie veikala aiziet, palīdz sapirkties, ko vajag, šoferis palūdzu, lai izdaram cauri.
Laikam jau tā ir dieviņa dāvana šeit veclaicenei, kur ir tiešām ļoti grūti aiziet līdz attiecīgai vietiņai, līdz veikalam vai līdz nav ārstu, nav šeit pasta, nav. Noteikti ir vajadzīgs transports. Man pat Aciņu līdz veikalam aiziet 3,5 kilometri. Citādīgi. Nu, līdz autobusam, ar skolēnu autobusam, kādu 1,5 kilometra, kur es nevaru, tikpat kā nevaru aiziet, jau vairāk nevaru aiziet. Un paldies tiem cilvēkiem, kas iedomājās par mums, kas tādu projektu mācēja sataisīt. Dieva doti projekti un Dieva doti cilvēki, kas pa mums ir parūpējušies.
So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Liga. Very almost touching message about human beings, people and their needs. And my Latvian is really bad, but I think the lady in the end said Europe or European or something.
Yes.
So I also think this is the European spirit as its best, working together with people, experts from anywhere across Europe, trying to improve the situation for people. So really nice story. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We're good on time as well. And again, I noticed questions in the question and answer section. I wrote them down so we won't forget. But let's proceed to the last presentation first of all. Quick update, by the way, about participants. We're 80 people now, so really strong attendance. And we're moving on to France, to Marie de Bizien. Where are my notes? My notes are here. Marie spent 15 years in international cooperation in France and in Asia, so she's seen a lot. She's now working for Leader France, which is a French federation of rural territories involved in the European Leader program. And she's in charge of a study focused on access to services in rural areas. And that study or the project is called ACCI. When I asked her about her vision or kind of impression, she said she's very impressed by all the inventions and abilities of the rural population and the local actors to face challenges. It's very hopeful for the future of rural areas. So Marie, I'm curious to hear about your experience.
Thank you.
I'll stop share my screen.
And I screen mine.
You can share yours.
Okay. Just a few minutes. Few seconds, yeah. I think it's working, right? Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to share with you the ACCI project, indeed, and especially the capitalization of experiences process. So first, I would like to show a very short video that explains clearly and briefly what is ACCI.
Excuse me, Marie, there is
Yeah?
no sound to your video, so you have to share your sound
No
as well.
sound. Okay, sorry. Just.
Voilà.
ACCI means accessibility of services to the population in rural areas. ACCI is a 3-year project that was started in 2018 by LEADER France, the National Federation of Rural Territories working within the European Programme of Rural Development LEADER, and 15 French and European partners in the framework of the Call for Collective Mobilization for Rural Development, launched by the National Rural Network. It identifies, promotes and shares good practices and innovative approaches that facilitate accessibility, maintenance and revival of services to the population in rural areas.
Okay, so
project's results are broadly...
It's very brief, but it's just to explain what is ACCI. So before giving some concrete example of innovative project, just a few words about the services to the population. What do we mean? So it's, of course, you can consider these services in terms of level of services. There are basic and local services that you can reach quite quickly, and other in big city or very big city that is more further. And you can also consider the services to the population in terms of baskets of services. That means, depending on the population of the user, there are different needs. And of course, all these services to the population are essential to the life of the territories. So I pass quite quickly because it's not the main topic. Last few words about the accessibility of services and the challenges which are linked. So I won't develop that much because MAMBA's project is quite expert on this, but I just want to show you and share with you this global chain of accessibility. It's designed by ADRE organization. It's a French organization, and it's very interesting because it points out the upstream and the downstream aspects of accessibility. That means that accessibility is not only physical or digital accessibility, but we also have to think about this. Okay, so in the framework of ACCI, we've listed and studied over 200 projects, and we identified 4 main levers. Of course, it's not exhaustive, but these levers helps to the maintenance or the development of services. So this morning, I will give some example, 1 or 2 examples per lever. I can't detail every project, of course, but just to give you an idea of what is ACCI. So the first lever is itinerant services and mobility solution. MAMBA is very expert on it. Of course, we can have some itinerant stores and services, grocery, bookstores, etc. But I want to focus on health mediation. It's a project led by Médecins du Monde, so Doctor of the World NGO. They have 2 projects in rural territories in France, and their approach is very interesting. They go towards the user, and especially towards the isolated and vulnerable people. So it's an outreach approach. It's very, very interesting. Other lever, it's pooling and the partnership between public and private actors. So in France, and I think maybe there exists in other European countries. We have public services center. Here you have an example in Gironde, in Castillon-la-Bataille in France. It's called Maison France Service, or MSAP. There are many centers like this in different parts of France, almost one per county. So some of them are managed by non-profit organizations in partnership with state government, of course, and municipalities. So it's this center combines physical reception of users and also digital support for at least, they provide at least 9 public services about employment services, family and social action, and etc. Another project, pooling project, is Comptoir de Campagne, or this kind of multi-services shops. They work with local partners, local producers, handcraftsmen, etc., and in partnership with the administration to provide a large range of services to the people living in the small territories, small village or rural territories. So it's very interesting also. And I just mentioned the rural third places. Here you have an example in Fort-Calquier, the cubic meter. So it's a place where these places bring together several activities and they contribute to develop the territory and offer a large kind of activity for people. So it's quite quick, I know, but I have to be quite short. So third lever is the cooperation and solidarity. So here I want to focus on the first project, Rural Youth Service Cooperative, YSC. So this concept is very interesting. It was born 30 years ago in Quebec, in Canada, and the first youth cooperative was created in Brittany, the region where I live, in 2013. And so the idea is quite simple. Young people set up their own work cooperative company to offer local services during the summer. So it's a temporary co-op company, and it satisfies needs of the territory without any competition with the local businesses. So it's a very interesting project. Other projects like cooperative housing, it has been mentioned by Frédéric before, or Village Vivant, it's also quite interesting. All these projects based on citizen participation or sharing economy is very interesting to boost the economic activity in rural territory and also to fight against depopulation. And the last lever, it's of course digitalization and e-services. So Frédéric also, I think, talk about smart village approach. I'm not an expert in it, but I think it's interesting to deep this approach. So you can find a lot of information on ENRD website, but to sum up, it's how to use innovative solutions to improve the well-being and the equity between the inhabitants. So it's very interesting. Of course, we can find also digital platforms. It's very interesting tools to improve the accessibility of services. For example, here in a platform for citizen participation in Wallonie, or another platform for supporting local producers in Hungary. But this kind of project platform exists in many countries, I think. But I want to give a word on Estonia, because Estonia is one of our partners, and we visited the country last February, and we discovered a very interesting model for e-services. It's very impressive because in Estonia, 99% of public services are accessible online. And all the people, Estonian people, receive a digital ID card, and they can, with it, complete a very wide range of procedure online. So for us French people, it's very, very impressive and interesting. But digital technology requires facilities and infrastructure, so it's sometimes difficult to access all services just thanks to the digital tool. And social link is very important, of course. So, okay, so for more information, you can visit our website. We have a database of projects both in French and English. And we've just published a new guide, collection of experiences that gathered almost 30 projects. So you can find more information in it. All these tools are available on our website. You have my contact, so if you need more information, you can ask me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. That was, again, super inspirational. I can highly recommend the database that you mentioned. There's a lot of inspiration and good ideas out there. Also, the MAMBA project and the MAMBA website has a kind of a database of good practice cases. So does the inclusion project I mentioned earlier on. So I'm really pleased to see that there's increasing attention to these kinds of challenges, because there's a great need, obviously. And in many cases, it's really the European Union, European Commission that funds these projects, which is good to see. Right. And we're now at 5 minutes past 11. The target time to end this webinar is 11:30, so we have about 25 minutes if we deduct a few minutes to give Kitty, our visual recorder, the screen again. Let's say we have 20 minutes. And I saw there are a number of questions came in the question and answer function. Maybe the quickest one to answer, and that might be of interest to everybody, is actually to our colleagues Nordregio. Where exactly on the website will the webinar recordings be available? Can you say that?
Yes, there will be a post on the news page with all the recordings and the presentations, and you'll also receive a newsletter with the links.
Excellent, thank you. Another question that is probably really quick to answer is whether the guide I presented earlier has already been tested and used. It hasn't, because it was just launched today, but in fact it kind of grew from the hands-on concrete experience of many projects, MAMBA project within the MAMBA initiative, the inclusion and other projects. And also it's based strongly on this SUMP concept. So it isn't just invented, it is put positively, really grounded in concrete experience. It's really empirically based. So these were these two quick questions. I know there are some other questions to specific presenters, but maybe we go on to the next one, which is probably to everybody, every presenter. So whoever has a view on that or a specific comment is welcome to respond. And maybe actually we can all turn on our cameras. That gives more the feeling of a panel discussion. Thank you. So the big question there is of relevance for everybody is about long-term funding. Maybe we can start with Liga, because the question, there were several questions. One is specifically to you about the financial model of the transport on-demand service in Latvia. Is it subsidized? What's the cost to the user? Is it more expensive than a bus? And also, maybe you can start addressing the question, what's the long-term funding situation? And also, maybe the other presenters can say something about this. I quote from the question, this is an age-old problem that projects are running while the funding is there, and once the project ends, meaning the funding stops. A big question about the future, the long-term future. Liga, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we are at the same problem for everyone. When EU or other funds are giving the funds for the project, you have money for implementation, and the project ends, and the financial side also ends. This is also a reality in our case. But nevertheless, we have raised this question on the state level already here in Latvia, and started to speak that it's very important to have the vision and direction for the local mobility issues, how to solve them, because the rights and reality are not equal at all comparing to the big cities and rural areas where we work. So further on, we as a region will be going on different other projects, applying for to continue such pilots in our other areas. But as well, we should work on state level and to solve this problem, how to make possible transport also in far rural areas. And of course, it is rather expensive if you compare to the public transport, but you cannot compare only the price, because one of the most important things is that it's about staying in the countryside, not leaving the place. So, and it's very important that people feel also more secure when they have this backup of transport availability.
Great, yeah, thank you, Liga. And can you say what's the cost to the users? Is it more expensive than the bus?
To the user, there is zero cost presently, because we were piloting it for free to see how it will work. But now when we evaluate our service, people are saying that they would like to pay themselves. Just don't leave us out. Just don't leave us not without the transport. So they are ready to pay, but yeah, that's how situation is.
Great, thank you. Frederick or Marianne, do you want to respond as well to the long-term funding issue?
Yes, I can respond to that. I know Nabucco is now actually a company, and it's 100% financed through contracts with municipalities and public transportation authorities here in Denmark and in Sweden. And that's how they will continue after the project ends. So it's financed, yeah, via the contracts with these two authorities. And that is also the business model that we are going with, looking for more countries throughout Europe. So that's how it will continue and is working now, actually. So yeah.
I can also briefly answer for us. We are a cooperative, so we basically bring the money that we need to build the Kodov, or like the community is paying for it. We of course are always happy if we get some public support, but we're not dependent on it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Marie, do you have experience from your overview, kind of bird's eye view of our many different projects?
Yes, so there are many different economic models in the several projects we collected. Some of them are financed by European funds, like a LEADER fund, for example. It's a good tool, even if it's quite complicated in some countries, but it's a good tool and funding for developing projects in rural areas. Most of the project are getting some support from authorities, so the local or governmental funds, and some of them also have has a cooperative model. So it's very interesting because it's based on sharing economy and pooling resources. So it's quite interesting as well.
Right. So it seems that there is, in some cases, a role of the state, of taxpayers' money, basically. Not in all of them. There seems to be an entrepreneurial opportunity in some cases, but from what I hear, it's not the simple solution that kind of private initiatives, private entrepreneurs can solve all the problems.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that's an important message to take away. Depending on the situation, different actors can and have to play a specific role there. In the spirit of the collaborative, the search for collaborative solutions. All right, thank you. I have another question to all of you, maybe a quick one. Someone is interested in rural shared transport schemes led by community groups. Do you know of any? You can recommend this person to look into. A question from the UK. No one? I think if you look in the, just one comes to mind, in the guide that I presented earlier, there's one example from a car sharing initiative in southern Germany called Pfaffenwinkel car sharing. And that's, I mean, by now it has grown into an organization, or the legal entity, but it started from citizens' initiative. So that might be something to look into. So if you check the guide, you will find that case study there. And if, yeah, please.
There is a project like a sharing car platform in a small town in south of France, in Aude department. So it has been launched by the municipality, but with the inhabitants. So it's very interesting. It's an electric car that the inhabitants can use for their daily transport. So it's quite interesting. You can find the experience sheet on the ACCI website, for example.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Also, I'm just thinking about the Cuxhaven initiative, which is part of the MAMBA project. That might be of interest to you as well. And in fact, I'm just thinking, because we have 80 participants out there, how can we organize that? There might be someone who has just the right answer. Maybe I'll show this bit here, because I was afraid we might not be able to go through all the questions. But if you have suggestions as well, can I volunteer our colleagues from Nordregio to kind of collect questions and answers and ideas to distribute that? That could be a way of facilitating the communication amongst all of us. So let's move on to another question, which is probably relevant in every case of some sort, more or less. And that's about the participation of the municipality, the administration, of mayors, political decision makers. To what degree, what's your experience at least, do they support that? Is there sometimes a degree of resistance? Between resistance and enthusiasm, what was your experience there?
Can I start? We had a great and good experience with local municipalities. This was our target, our stakeholders, and first of all, not we found them, but they found us. The transport problem was there. So, and this is how we started to cooperate. Of course, everything ends when there is a question about the financing, because they are very open to the new initiatives. They are ready to try to pilot, but of course they do not have any extra money for such pilots.
Thank you. Do the others have any experience with the role of the state municipality administration?
I find that the municipalities more and more are aware of they need to do something to the mobility in the rural areas. So they are quite interesting in what is happening also here in Vejle, because the buses are not getting more, they're getting less. So they need to do something out there, and the rural areas are asking for a solution for it. So that combination is very, yeah, so they are interested and they are supportive. I find that, yes. If you ask me what this, or sometimes in the rural areas we hear that they are afraid of entering into our project because they are afraid that the last bus will disappear then if they do that. But since we are working together with the national travel planner, the one with all the bus and train timetables in, that kind of tells them, okay, we don't want your bus to go away. We're actually working together with the transportation authorities as well. So that kind of ease it a little bit down, yes.
Great, thank you.
I just wanted to add that we had, as Marianne said, we had also a very strict regulation when we made our pilots that we will not interrupt in the public transport system, because we didn't want it, the public transport system is stopped. So we were very careful with this issue, and I think we had a good cooperation as well. So that's also our experience.
From our side, I really have to say that the cooperation with the mayors is among the most motivating and inspiring aspects of our work, because it's really nice to see that there are so many young, progressive and ambitious mayors all around the countryside in Germany who really want to push their communities forward. And so we only come visit when mayors are inviting us, so that's really important. So we always have the support of the mayors, and then if we together with the municipality and the administration can push things forward and show that innovation really works, it's really amazing to see how everyone is really energized by it. Because I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Germany, like the rural areas really have a bad reputation usually. I mean, we're not like really have a great reputation in general for innovation lately, especially when it comes to digitization. But especially when we look at the rural areas, it's really looked down. And also because the media, they are only located in the big cities. It's like hardly any coverage, any nationwide coverage of rural phenomena and municipalities. So it's really, really amazing to support those people who want to do something, who want to change something for the better, and together really make those kind of uplifting narratives more visible and widespread, and inspire other communities to do the same.
Great, thank you very much. That was mostly encouraging. That's really good to hear. It's also good to hear a special thanks to a participant out there who actually provided an example. I guess that was a response to the other person's question about rural shared transport schemes led by the community. I assume everyone can see the question and answers. It's about Ladel und People Bus. Again, a nod to our colleagues from Nordregio. If you could document that, maybe we can add this in the presentation slide so everyone can access this URL there. In case you can't read the question and answer window, I don't know whether that's technically feasible. In any case, a quick question maybe to Marianne specifically about the insurance for drivers. So that's the driver side of your sharing scheme, and the other is safety for passengers. Is there any kind of check or registration process drivers and passengers have to go through?
Not a specific check, but when you register in the Navigo solution, you do it with your name and your address and your work address and everything, and with a picture, so everybody can see who you are. In the beginning, we were talking about, in Denmark, we have something called NemID, which is a governmental ID that we can log on with, that is specific for one person, but that it was too big to do during the project period. So since it's a local solution, I know it's a national, but mostly in rural areas, everybody knows everybody. So we created the solution like that. And to the question about insurance, since it's a ride-sharing solution that you share a ride, then you don't need additional insurance. Your own insurance is covering everything. So we also checked into that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're coming to an end, but I think there's at least one more question which I would like to pose, and maybe close with it then before we show the visual recording. I think the slogan or the heading of that question is social return on investment. So we talked about funding and kind of economic aspects in a narrow sense. The question here is about, I mean, these solutions might enable people to gain a certain education that otherwise they might not be able to access, or they might even prevent people from getting unemployed, because through these kinds of services, they can go to a place of work. And I want to link that specifically with another question, which is about COVID-19 and people being almost locked in their location, higher demand for remote working, local tourism, which also has an impact on rural areas. You could see this under the umbrella, at least I see it that way, as kind of a social return on investment or a broader understanding of economics. Is that something that is appreciated implicitly, explicitly, when it comes to funding considerations in any of your projects?
I can say for our part that next to going to rural areas, we also go to companies, big companies and smaller companies, both in big cities and small cities. And we also encourage people to say, okay, my ride is a quiet ride because I want to work. But we also tell people this is also a way of meeting new people, meeting other people in your local village. So the social aspect of this is quite big. During the COVID-19 situation, we have put a limit in Navigo that you can only ride 3 people in the car at a time, and we tell people to face the same way and wear masks. So we really try to take care of people riding together. Yeah.
We were also using all restrictions during the COVID-19, and our mobility center coordinator was calling to each of our clients, drivers, to be responsible when using the trip, and twice to think if they do really need to go somewhere. So In reality, we were continuing our pilot during the crisis, during the COVID, but the people were driving less.
And would you say that there's an appreciation or at least an awareness of the benefits that the service provides in terms of is it worth the money that the subsidies that the state would be required to continue putting in there in terms of enabling people to access education, jobs, and so forth?
Definitely, I think our pilot shows that people really need possibility, just that they know that they are able to go when there is a need, you know, to the big city and to get the service, or to go to the big city and have work, because as we all know, the work is in a bigger cities, not in a far rural area.
Marie, can I ask you about the experience from France in terms of social return on investment, to use this economics expression, but in a wider sense, understood economics in a really broad sense?
So just short word, but during the COVID-19, of course, we show that we know that the accessibility of services were very big challenges. So it was important to find solutions to access services despite the confinement and everything. So during the confinement and these last few months, we identify very great solution. But right now, I hope these kind of good practices will continue. So it not just depends on the inhabitants and citizens, but also depends on the political decision. But the rural areas show their great inventivity and solution to find and to find a solution for improve the accessibility of services. So I have great hope, but we have to wait and see.
Excellent.
Not wait and see, but act and see.
Act and see. I like that. That's great. Actually, that's a brilliant closing remark. And we're at 11:30. Act and see. I think we are actually through all the questions. There was another one which is quick to answer: where to find the guide that I presented earlier. On my last slide, you'll see an internet address to the publications page of the MAMBA project. So this is where you'll find it. But before we stop, let's pan over to Kitty and her visual recording. I'm curious what she made out of our conversation.
Should I share my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen already. Thank you. It's a bit blurry.
A bit blurry. Then I'd rather share my screen so maybe you can see it better then.
Yeah, if you could.
Yes. Okay. Can you see it in a good condition?
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. Maybe if you walk us through the corners of your drawing in a minute or two.
Sure. So in the left upper corner, we can see the Everybody's Guide to Collaborative Mobility and Accessibility that you presented, which was kind of a book launch. You stressed, of course, the phrase collaborative, and that it's implemented and initiated by grassroots, but also the public sector, and showed us different phases that are shown in the book. Then we went on to the inspirational stories. So it was started by Nabugo, which is a ride-sharing service which connects all different ways of matching rides, which I showed here. Then we continued to Kodorf, which so to say has urban infrastructure in rural areas and really is changing dynamics in rural areas. We continued to a transport on demand service on the very right side in Latvia. And the very nice video showed us all very personal insights and reasons why users are so really use the service. And finally, Access R and the lower bottom showed us all the different topics they're tackling. For example, itinerant services and mobility, public and private pooling, utilization, cooperation, solidarity, and digitalization. I will add, of course, all the names of the speakers when finishing the visual recording. And last but not least was the panel discussion and Q&A. Funding, for once, was a topic, and strategies were highlighted. Also, working with the state municipality was talked about. Yes, and the last topics like security and working with municipality, I will add also in the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kitty. That was great. And beautiful as well. So it's a lot of rich in content and rich in aesthetics. That's great. That's a poster I can put in my office behind my office chair. Super. Someone is writing clap, clap, clap. Yes, we can do this. Thank you very much. All right. If you stop sharing your screen, then I can probably show mine again. Just for a few seconds, in fact, because we're at the end of our webinar, but I do not want to close the session without another marketing speech about the next week's part 3 of the final MAMBA web conference, which is, as I announced, more about the policy aspects, bigger issues, what can be done by various levels of policy making. And here are the contacts, myself, of the MAMBA project leader and the project managers. And here's the URL where you can find a range of outputs from the MAMBA project, including the guide and the other documents I mentioned today. Yes, thank you to all the participants. There were 80, that was the maximum, I think, which is fantastic. Thank you especially to the speakers, the presenters, to the tech team at Nordregio, everyone working behind the scenes. It was a great experience. I think I learned a lot. It would have been nice to have this conference face-to-face in Berlin as it was originally planned. I think we made the best use of technology that we can make. And maybe that's also a motto. The technology can be used for good services. It's not the solution to everything. Human beings always matter, and always a good handshake and a shared conversation over coffee is better than a Zoom webinar. But nevertheless, I think we could do what was possible. It was great fun and inspiring. Thank you very much to everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.